Welcome to this special episode of Invest Rwanda, where we explore the new fintech strategy led by the Kigali International Finance Centre. To shed light on this initiative, we spoke with Leila Rwagasana, FinTech Lead at KIFC. Stay tuned to discover how Rwanda is positioning itself as a great financial hub in Africa. Let's begin this conversation on the core objectives of this new fintech strategy that has been launched and how that aligns with Rwanda's digital platform.
Thank you for having me today. I'd like to put just a little bit of context as to why the country really focuses on fintech before even deep diving into the objectives of the strategy. I think we have seen a lot of uptake in digital platforms, digital products, even using technology to access our everyday lives. So fintech really comes in as how we have seen that uptake and the importance of really developing a policy around basically building a conducive environment for financial technology, products, services, and so on and so forth. So the strategy really, now answering to your question, is a policy that guides the innovators I've mentioned that have been really evolving around different products. But most importantly, it has two core objectives. The first one is driving the financial inclusion of the country. So how do we basically drive or really see an uptake in understanding financial literacy, in seeing uptake in financial products, increasing the uptake in, if I give you an example of formal banking access to many people, we are still at slightly 22% today of formal banks, and we want to see that increasing. So how do we drive that inclusion? And the second core objective is to position Rwanda as a fintech hub on the continent. And what we want is to use basically a country's reputation as the launchpad for innovation. How do we remain or reinforce that reputation now being a launchpad for financial technology? We invite local innovators, international innovators to really come and test their ideas. And that's what we aspire for this strategy to achieve. And to how does it relate to KIFC's vision? Our mandate is to attract investments on the continent, and one of our key niche areas in attraction of those investments is fintech. And fintech being, if I may say, a niche area to KIFC, it actually really answers the aspect of positioning Rwanda as a fintech hub. Today, as an international financial center, we are ranked second in the fintech aspect under the GFCI index as of recent. And what does this mean? It means that as an IFC positioning itself as a fintech hub, we are second in terms of attracting those investments.
You touched, I think, a bit on your vision that aligns with the new strategy that has been launched. Maybe you could help us dive a little bit in on how your vision fully aligns with the strategy that has been launched today.
The vision itself of attracting investments and how it aligns today, I think, just to put it very simply again, among the key expected outcomes of the strategy is having over 300 key fintech players. And we also have a bold vision of at least having a unicorn that would have started in Rwanda and becoming a unicorn on the continent. That's very bold, but if you look at that in terms of increasing those key players, KIFC plays a big role in, one, attracting those key players through the attraction of investments in general. So our role is to basically, when we are promoting KIFC as the jurisdiction, the preferred jurisdiction for investments, we also look at attracting investors that are looking at investing in innovation. And that's how we see a huge role of even advancing some of the fintechs here in Rwanda. So attracting capital deployment that are possibly focused on fintech, and they choose Rwanda because that's the hub where you find innovation for fintech. So that's how we will play the role. Secondly, it's also because we are building that conducive environment for fintechs is where we attract innovators to come use Rwanda as the launch pad. So how do they come, start in Rwanda, test their idea, test on the market, then scale on the continent. And the scaling part is how we now start conversations of what we call license portability. License portability is when you can have a license in Rwanda and you want to scale. You go to Ghana, for example, and we have a license portability regime. Then you go to Ghana, you can easily penetrate the market without, again, going through the license process. So as KIFC, we collaborate with regulators on how do we bring in those conversations, and that's our main role. And if I may add on the last part on how do we achieve that now. You have seen on different platforms that we are leading the organization of one of the biggest fintech forum, the Inclusive Fintech Forum. It's expected to be in February on 24th and 26th. We are co-organizing this with our partners in Singapore, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and now we have, thankfully, the Central Bank of Rwanda now co-organizing this. So if I summarize it, 3 areas: attraction of key players to either start or to scale through Rwanda. Second is the forums that we bring in, such as IFF, where we gather policymakers, regulators, innovators, and investors where they deploy the capital, and they do it in Rwanda.
How are you integrating this fintech strategy in line with Rwanda's strategy of digitalizing the whole landscape?
One of the key, I would say, key objectives on NST2 is to digitize all government services, even financial services. The strategy really integrates into that because it looks at really unveiling innovation and particularly digitizing financial services, and most importantly, driving financial inclusion. So I would say, in my opinion, that relates to NST2 in its achievement. And if you see when it was launched, it also goes into the same time frame that the NST2 has to be launched, particularly on that component. Yeah.
When we look at some, which areas specifically, let's say AI or digital platforms, are we measuring or are you fixing on to see that you drive this?
I think I'm not a policymaker, but I would say personally where I see a strong uptake. Even during the launch, the governor mentioned it. I think for the past 10 years, we have started with a very, very low uptake of innovators in the payment industry. In 2014, I think he mentioned we only had 3 payment service providers, and today we have 36 payment service providers. So that's just only in the payment aspect. Now, in other products of fintech, I think we are going to see an uptake, particularly on lending, so the land tech aspect, which I think will be a key component in driving financial inclusion, because it's going to, if I may say, disturb the tradition of finance, the tradition of banking, where lending is actually limited to certain people. Yeah, so you're going to see the women entrepreneurs now starting to use more cash, for example, and even these other products that are on the market. In the immediate, I would say, future for me, that's where I see, but of course, even the aspects of regulation technology, which is what we call RegTech, are going to really see some uptake in Rwanda. Yeah, thank you.
As we bring the conversation to a close, we'd love to understand how are you going to scale up this strategy towards driving financial inclusion in relation to the economic growth of the country.
Thank you. I think towards even my conversation, I kept referring to As a result, we want to see many, many key players, even a unicorn. But what I could actually add as an impact, a huge impact we should expect, or at least we have a bold vision to, to bring into place, is to really create an environment of capital deployment, or even availability or access to capital. One of the key issues for fintechs today is to have access to finance or to funding. We even discussed it during the launch. Some of the fintechs mentioned that the challenge is to actually go to banks, ask for money to scale their business, but because they don't have that collateral that they usually ask, it becomes very challenging. So we want to see a diversification of the traditional finance and traditional investments basically shifting, so that we see different fintechs now being open to seeking more investments. We want to see an ecosystem where you find privately owned VCs, venture capital, private equity, that are focusing and supporting fintechs. Most importantly, I think on the country level, the strategy, the impact we are expecting to see is the financial inclusion and financial literacy, which will lead to over, at least what we are aiming to have is at least over 80% uptake or adoption on fintech. And this is during our journey, and what we have discussed during the launch is leveraging on existing campaigns such as Twagiye Cashless to really drive that literacy of using technology for financial services. But also, how do we now generally bring in the tradition of teaching financial literacy at a young age? It's really important to commend what the central bank has been doing on the financial literacy part, where they are focusing on really teaching at national secondary schools in terms of understanding financial services, and also doing that quiz challenge. I think it's equipping our the youth that are coming up to uptake in the financial services, and that's the impact, I think. Different key players, diversification of different products, and being the hub for fintech as a country on the continent, yeah.
It was a pleasure speaking to you at CNBC Africa. Thank you very much for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.